Today's video is going to be how you can reduce your oil consumption with the little brass plug. Hello, welcome to ET Garage. I'm Eugene Tordo, and today's video, like I said, is going to be about trying to reduce oil consumption or in a worn motor by using a little brass plug. Now, this will only work if you have a functional PVC system. It's just a temporary fix for a motor that basically needs a rebuild or has problems. I had a friend not too long ago. I put one of these little plugs in there in his PVC system to help create a little bit more vacuum in his engine, which actually needs valve guide seals, and it helped a little bit. It's not a cure-all, it's not a fix, it'll help a little bit. Your engine from the factory should normally, and this is naturally aspirated, should have 2 to 3 inches of vacuum in it. And the way you test that is with a vacuum gauge and a warm engine. Run the engine, get it warm, hook a vacuum gauge up to your dipstick. If your PVC system's working correctly and you don't have a lot of blow-by, you should have 2 to 3 inches. If you got blow-by, you can help seal it up a little bit by installing this little brass plug I'll show you here shortly. It doesn't have to be brass, it could be plastic, it could be metal. Just don't use something like wood or cork, you know. Could be aluminum, whatever material you have around. I'll show you here, like I said, in a few minutes. Basically, you're reducing the opening of the PVC system's intake side, and that helps create more of a vacuum from the PVC system, which helps seal up things like your valve guide seals. It'll help pull your piston rings out a little bit more, get a little more tension on them if they're worn, and help seal better. And it's not a cure-all. It's basically like just saying that you have an engine that you just, it's like your little weekend warrior. You go to car shows and stuff. You don't want to put a lot of money into it just for that, and you just want to help reduce smoking and oil burning a little bit. And this may or may not help. It's not a cure-all, like I said. Let me move the camera around and I'll show you what to do. And before I do that, though, like I said, you could use a, like here I have a piece of brass bar stock. Let me see, here it is. And it just happens to be the right diameter to fit inside my PVC hose. And then I just drill a hole in it and stick it in there, and if it works, fine. If not, then take it out and try a different size hole. Start with an 1/8 inch hole. If that creates too much vacuum, you might want to go a little bit bigger. If it doesn't create enough vacuum, you might want to go a little bit smaller. Like I said, let me move the camera around and I'll show you where it goes and what to do. So just hold on there a second. All right, let's first go over a PVC system, how they normally work. Here you have a hose hooked to the throttle body. This is the intake. Okay, this brings in cool air from the intake. This just basically goes through the front of the throttle bottle, gets filtered air, so you're not getting dirt into your crankcase. Then if you come around to the other side, you will have a PVC valve. This one here is a adjustable, dual flow adjustable PVC valve. This is good for if you have a camshaft. It helps you control. This helps control your vacuum and adjust the amount of vacuum that you have in your crankcase and go into the intake. Just forget about that. I have videos. I'll leave links to it. I have videos on it, so I'll leave links to that up here somewhere at the end of this video. But if you just have the stock PVC valve, don't worry about it. It'll have a PVC valve here, and the hose usually runs to the intake depending on your car. Doesn't matter if it's fuel injected or carbureted, it works the same way. Basically, you're taking fresh air from that side, and this side is sucking the fumes out of the crankcase and creating a slight vacuum inside the crankcase. By creating a slight vacuum inside the crankcase, it helps keep the engine, the seals seal better, and it also helps draw moisture out of the crankcase, because whenever you start your car on a cold day like today, it's like 30 degrees out. You're going to get, when you first start it up, as the engine starts and warms up, you're going to get condensation in there, and as it cools down, it's going to draw condensation in there. And then when you go start it up, the engine warms up again, the PVC system helps draw all that moisture out of your crankcase, which is important, because that condensation, if it just keeps building up in there, it'll turn your oil to sludge, and you don't want that. But anyway, if you do have, don't worry about this if your engine's stock. You don't need any of this. Like, I have a air oil separator. That helps, of course, keep oil out of your intake track and all that stuff. Let's get back to the other side, and I'll show you where to put that plug. Okay, what I did on mine is you would unplug it here, you would stick the brass plug in there, and then just slide it on. And here you can see I have one in there for the purpose of this video, and it goes on there. And you just push it in there. Now, the thing is, if you have to get that out, you just put like a little coat hanger or something in there and hook it on there and pull it out. So if you decide to take it out, start with an 1/8 inch. If that ain't enough, go a little bit smaller. I wouldn't go too much smaller than an 1/8 inch. If you got that much blow by, well, better just consider getting a motor. But here you can see I have the vacuum gauge hooked to the dipstick tube. And then you would just start it. I'm not going to go into this, start it up. You won't be able to hear anything with the motor running anyway. But a stock motor without using any of this, that's in good shape. You should have 2 to 3 inches. And you'll see the gauge. In the case of this gauge here, it'll just barely move to hit that white line. That's all it has to move. Now, if you do this, make sure the engine's warm when you do it, and give it a few minutes to bring vacuum up. And run the motor up a little bit to like 2,000 RPM. It's not going to hurt anything. And that will help. Like I say, it will help draw your valve guide seals tighter, the vacuum. And it also helps draw your piston rings tighter. If you look at some race motors, they use a crankcase vacuum pump. And that helps. They usually run about like 21 inches of vacuum, I think, inside the crankcase. You should have special seals when you do that. You got to worry about pulling your seals inside out if you're doing that. But don't worry about it. This applies to basically stock motors. You won't have to worry about any of that. But they do that because it reduces windage, mostly because it reduces windage inside the crankcase at high RPMs. That's why race engines use a vacuum pump on the crankcase. Those are specially built. They're not like the smog pump here, which is actually designed to blow air into the exhaust. I actually have one of those that I converted to a vacuum pump and ran on the crankcase. I'll leave a link to all that, like I said, up here at the end of the video. But that's really about it on this today. I don't have too much going on. Let me see. You don't need. All you need is a vacuum gauge to measure your vacuum. You don't even actually need that. It's better to, so you have an idea how much vacuum, because you don't want to create too much vacuum, and at the same time, you want to get a vacuum gauge gives you an idea how well your PVC system is working, if it's working at all. That's another thing. If your PVC system's not working correctly, the PCV valve, positive crankcase ventilation valve, is stuck and it's not working. That could be a problem. So take care of that if it's not. And you don't need a lathe or a milling machine or anything. Just get a little plug of material. Could be plastic. It could be steel, aluminum, anything that's not going to break apart and get sucked down that hose into your crankcase. And if that happens, that could be bad. So just keep that in mind. And what you need is to drill a little hole in it You know, you can use a drill, a little Dremel tool, whatever. You can experiment. It's good to stick the vacuum gauge on there and experiment a little bit. See what kind of vacuum, dial in your vacuum perfectly. That definitely doesn't hurt. So, can't think of too much more to talk about in this video. I like to keep these videos at least 10 minutes long. That's supposed to be good for the algorithm and what the advertisers like to see on YouTube. So I gotta talk on for a couple of more minutes anyway. In the meantime, I got projects that I want to do on the Vet. I don't know if I'm going to do them. Right now, I really don't want to do anything. I've done almost everything to this car that I want to do. I mean, there's little things I could do. I always wanted to take this whole front clip off and put, like here, I have the cheap eBay vinyl wrap on here. And this used to be all wrinkly. I took this whole thing off once before. I put these thin aluminum plates underneath to flatten it out. And then I put the cheap eBay vinyl wrap on it to cover it up. The same with the license plate filler. This is all beat up. Anyone who's not familiar with my car, this has 271,000 miles on it right now. That's basically the body and the glass. Nothing else is here stock. Anyone who follows my channel knows I've done all sorts of work to this car. That's a 385 board and stroke. I redid that last year. Thinking of taking it out and making a 400. Also, I got, aftermarket wheels. I got Wildwood brakes. I got all sorts of videos. If you go to my YouTube homepage, there is a bunch of playlists, including track days, doing the carpet, the exhaust, headers, all sorts of things that I've done on this car. So keep that in mind. And let's see, other thing I'd like to do is like in the back. This is like, must have the world's, I don't know if you can see it here, but I have the world's wrinkliest rear clip on the back of a C4. And then when it gets out in the sun, it gets even more wrinkly. It's like the front was. So I'm thinking of taking this off and doing the same thing underneath to flatten this out. Now, I've heard of people saying you can heat these up and then you put water on them, you heat them up with a heat gun, and that shrinks them. I've tried that, and I think I ended up making it worse. So I'm thinking of taking it off and either putting, I don't know if I'm going to use aluminum on the back. I think I'll use I'll see if I can get rigid plastic or something under there, cut it out and glue it to it and flatten that out that way. I also want to put, and this sounds strange, vents back here. If you ever see the C4 Sledgehammer, which was held world records for I don't know how many years, like at a top speed at 255 mph or something like that, and it had twin turbos. It was all modified, of course, but it also had all sorts of aerodynamic modifications, including vents right here. This was like built into the vent, the side marker lights, the turn signals and backup lights. But so I was thinking of just making a vent though underneath here. And the idea of that is to let air out, that pressure that builds up underneath this rear fascia or clip or whatever you want to call it, and causes the car to lift and creates extra drag. So I was thinking of putting it there for looks mostly, and what the heck, if it reduces drag and I get a couple more miles to the gallon or another mile per the gallon on long trips, why not? So that'll be another project. And maybe I'll do some more data logging videos. I haven't done any of them in a while. The ones that I did do was when I first started making videos, and they weren't really that great. But I don't know. If anybody can think of something that I can do without spending a lot of money, I'll do it. But like this top, I keep wanting to clear it. Up here, you can see that metal piece coming off again. I have two tops. I got the one in the basement. I did a video on that. I had to reattach the top. It was coming off. That's a solid top. And then I got the cheap eBay vinyl on it. Ooh, you can see a crack forming here too. Now, I want to do something with that top. I can redo it myself. There's a company that sells a top, but the only top they sell is it's gray, and I don't know how that's going to look with the rest of the car. I really like the black. I could sell it to Melrose T-Tops, but then you have to ship the whole thing to him because he'll only do it, and then that's also more expensive. And my YouTube channel is mostly about DIYers and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'll let you guys know what I do. If I do take it to Melrose, he's out in Illinois, I believe. Maybe I'll take a road trip out there when the weather's nice in the Corvette. Drive it out there, drop it off, and then I'll just pay him to ship it back. That's another cost, too, of shipping that back. Can't be cheap. So something to keep in mind. For now, I guess I'll just end the video instead of rattling on. But I got my 10 minutes. So everybody have a great day, and God bless.